I wasn't in pain, but my body felt like as if it hadn't moved for ages. I got up from this strange bed and looked around. The room looked like I could be in some kind of hospital. There was some medical equipment and a desk. Had I had an accident? I couldn't remember. In fact, I couldn't remember anything at all. Neither my past, my name, or my whereabouts. If I hadn't been able to look at myself, I wouldn't even have known that I was a man. I looked at my bed again. It looked like it had a lot of technology in it that you couldn't see at first glance. An instinct told me to put my hand on the glowing area on the edge of the bed. I did and was surprised. The bed projected a holograph image directly in front of me. It looked like the desktop of a computer. You navigated with your fingers like on a touchscreen, except that the screen was in the air. One file had the name Patient X 425638. Hoping to find out more about me, I clicked on it, sure enough. The file showed a picture of me along with a bunch of text. My name was apparently Barry Hodge. Apparently I'd been suffering from something called glioblastoma since 2007. It was probably a very malignant brain tumor. This news would have knocked my socks off if it hadn't been more information on that file. It said that I'd been cured in the year 2138. That was more than 100 years after my diagnosis. I understood shortly afterwards. After being completely cured of the tumor, I was put back into cryostasis. I don't remember. But now it made sense. I must have been quite rich and had myself frozen before I died. The doctors of the future must have been able to cure me then. But then why did they put me back into cryostasis? I found out in the next paragraph. They could cure any kind of cancer, but they had not yet been able to bring people back to life from cryostasis without brain damage. What I read next shocked me to the core. Apparently, they had found a way, but not very quickly. Awakening from cryostasis on October 31st, 4477. That was almost 2,500 years after my death. Damn, I had a lot of catching up to do. I went out of the room and looked for a doctor. After all, someone had to have revived me. But the corridor was deserted. There was another room right next to mine, but I decided to take the elevator I saw at the end of the corridor. As I approached it, I heard a buzzing sound. Then the elevator arrived and opened the doors for me. That was always convenient. I stepped inside and saw on the display above the doors that I was on the 48th floor. My goodness. Since there were no buttons, I tried to speak the command. "To the first floor, please," I said. "Of course, sir." The elevator replied and started moving. I could only guess at the speed at which we were going up because it took less than 5 seconds for the doors to open up again. It was dark on the first floor, with only emergency lighting providing some light. There was an abandoned counter and a waiting area with chairs. Unfortunately, I couldn't see out the window because the shutters were down, but it didn't matter because the door was unlocked and I stepped outside. I immediately regretted it. Heat, wind, and a lot of sand whipped into my face. I couldn't see much except that we were definitely in a desert. I quickly closed the door again and took the elevator back down. As I did so, I noticed they had a small wound on my right arm with a greenish tinge. I wondered where I'd gotten it. As I only knew the 48th basement floor, I went back there. There had to be a doctor somewhere. I searched several corridors, found no one. The empty, poorly lit corridors now somehow scared me. On the way back to my room, I found another room. The door was locked, but when I pulled the handle, I heard a noise in the room. "Hello? Is someone there? I'm a patient or a customer and I need help," I said. When I noticed that I also had a strange greenish wound on my other arm, I was worried about my health. Maybe the scientists had made a mistake. I didn't get an answer. Instead, several people were now banging on the door from the inside. But the banging on the door wasn't the only sound coming from the room. The grunts and groans sounded human, but somehow not. I didn't want to find out who was making these noises, so I kept walking. When I got to my room, I remembered that there was another room next door. I listened carefully and was relieved when I didn't hear any moaning. Then I entered. Somehow my head really hurt now, and I was getting very hungry. There was a futuristic bed here, too, just like in my room, but it was covered with a milky glass cover. Somehow, I now knew that I could also operate the computer here with my voice, but I knew that I couldn't say, "Computer, tell me who woke me up in cryostasis," I commanded the device. The question is unclear. Answer may be unsatisfactory. Dr. Dexter Stanfield was awake in this body with the help of the TP-500 elixir, the machine replied. Why did that name sound familiar? I needed to know more about this elixir that helped to awaken me. Tell me more about the TP-500 elixir. Gladly, Doctor. It was originally developed over 2,000 years ago, it was rediscovered 7 years ago, and the experiments began. The aim was to modify it so that it would revive customers in cryostasis without brain damage. Many tests failed. This morning, the first test succeeded. The revived customer had no loss of motor or cognitive abilities. The elixir was then administered to all customers who were still asleep to awaken them over the next few days. That sounded good. If this woman was also awakened, then I was definitely not alone here. Only now did I realize that the computer had called me doctor. I hadn't read anything in my file about the fact that I had a doctorate. Computer, where is the customer who was awakened this morning now? I asked. In cryobed 183 in this room, Dr. Stanfield. The machine obviously mistook me for the doctor who worked here. Well, computers weren't perfect in this millennium either. I'd moved closer to the bed and tried to see through the milky glass. I almost had a heart attack when the person lying in it snapped at me. I wouldn't exactly call that a successful resuscitation. I sank to my knees. Something was wrong with me. I noticed open wounds on my face. Computer, what happened to this customer, and what's happening to me? I asked desperately. After a few hours, the customer changed for unknown reasons. She died and then bit several employees of the facility, including you, Dr. Stanfield. Oh, now I remembered. I was not Barry Hodge. I was Dexter Stanfield, doctor of neomedicine and head of this facility. Well, it was my mind that housed this brain. The body was Barry Hodge's, that was true. I also remembered how this woman went crazy. She was biting everyone, so he had to lock her up. Then the team that got bitten also changed and killed everyone who worked here except me. They bit me before I could lock her up. I knew what was going to happen to me and made a tough decision. I needed a new body. Using the Cerebellum X machine, I extracted my mind from the dying body and transferred it into one of my sleeping clients. But there was a problem. It wasn't the woman who was to blame for the transformation, but the elixir. I realized how it was changing me again. My only chance was to take on a different body again and find an antidote before I transformed. I went into the room with the Cerebellum X machine and saw my body still trapped in the bed connected to the machine. It snapped greedily at me. Zombie grab. Computer, transport these creatures to the surface. They're a danger to me down here. Yes, Dr. Stanfield. As the bed disappeared into an opening in the floor and a new one was raised, I realized I was getting weaker. Find me a client who seems healthy to you and then transfer my mind into their body. Also, please prepare all the files I need to search for an antidote to the transformation. Yes, doctor. Then I lay down in bed and let the procedure wash over me. It was a strange feeling to exist for a short time in the memory of a machine. Then I woke up. I wasn't in pain, but my body felt like I hadn't moved for ages. I got up from this strange bed and looked around. The room looked like it could be in some kind of hospital. Where was I here? I had to find a doctor.